morning, everybody. This is going to be Charge versus Defiant, King's Row Scrim. I'll be looking at the Charge team mostly for this first half, and then specifically onto Waffle's Orisa gameplay for the second half of the video, and let's get into it. Yeah, so right here, you're going to notice where the Orisa is placed, their shield, right up top here, because it's far forward right next to the ledge area there. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because the further that you put your shield, like because it's right far forward towards this ledge area, that means there's going to be a gap here. And it's just wide enough that you'd be able to get a halt up right into this area and then try and pull maybe the Ana down, or perhaps the Brig, maybe the Ash might get into it, so you have a nice little halt area here. If you can get the timing correct, you can work on precise halts between gaps and shields and whatnot to pull people off the high ground. So that's the first thing that I'd be looking at here. I would deploy my shield right here, and that allows your team to get some good positioning right here, because you can just play around this central pillar area either on the left or the right, but since you chose the right side, that is perfectly fine. And then you can go in coordination with Akuma sending out his barrier, and he could send his barrier actually like all the way out here, like he can just put it like right in front of them, and that will absorb probably 90% of what they're throwing down at you from that angle. So keep in mind you can do that with Sigma quite easily, and then when Waffle's shield breaks, Kuma, you have the kinetic grasp to absorb a lot of the damage from the Ash or Ana or Genji or Orisa as well, because these four heroes are going to be a factor for every kinetic grasp that you have. So, I mean, not including Brig and Sigma, you can still block 2/3 of their team's damage easily with a good kinetic grasp every few seconds there. So that would be my first thing pointing out this opening fight, is that overall you are playing in cover, so that's good. And then putting your shield down here where I marked it, and then looking for an initial halt to try and get a separation, perhaps one or two or more teammates pulled off around the Orisa shield, or say behind the Orisa shield at this angle in particular, while simultaneously breaking the Orisa shield and then forcing them to use the Sigma barrier, then focusing the Sigma barrier, and vice versa. So it is a slow push sort of thing with the double shield, but positioning is very important, and taking advantage of certain gaps and whatnot between shield cooldowns and placements to potentially halt people off the high ground. So let us continue on here. Yeah, and again right here, because you do have both barriers out at the same time, what I recommend is you put Waffle's shield down, and you can give it a good 3 seconds before you need to put the Sigma shield down. And then you can also put it right here. Like, there's no reason that you'd be able to not do that, because, I mean, they're all grouped up in a nice little bunch here, so you can block all of their damage at this point from just a single Sigma barrier. And then once your barrier breaks, you can use the kinetic grasp, absorb a lot of damage, and build up your personal shields on Sigma for here, and then Waffle will have his shield back up. So it's kind of that three punch combo when it comes to playing double shield and cycling through your cooldowns, Orisa Shield first, then Sigma Barrier, then Kinetic Grasp, and then the next Orisa Shield, and then you rinse and repeat the process. It's not very fun, and a lot of people don't like it, but the fundamentals are there, and you just gotta roll with it sometimes. Of course, they're playing double shield because Reinhardt is banned this week, so it makes sense to me. Perhaps a little bit of dive practice in there too, because we might see that on like Nepal Sanctum. That's certainly another strong double shield map, but teams have been known to run a lot of dive there, as well as things on Rialto and say the first point of King's Row. Of course, you could certainly run dive here quite effectively, but for this, we'll just stick to the double shield talk, and then we'll keep going here. That is a good Moira orb there, getting a lot of value. Yes, and again, you are sending the halt up there. You're identifying what needs to be halted, but the shield is not broken yet. So what you want to do is you want to send the halt up right here, and then stop it and try and pull people down when the Orisa shield is broken. So you sent it up just a little bit too soon. But nonetheless, Nade does catch the opposing Team Sigma. Yeah, I'm going to go back to this little point right here. See, he drops down, you send halt out. You don't have to worry about halting the Orisa down at this point. It is where Kuma placed his shield to block the Ash's damage. I would suggest that you turn away from the Orisa and the Brig. They're not actually going to be able to do that much to you, especially with the Moira and the Ana heals that you have right here. It's not like they're going to be able to just one-shot you up there. So the Ashe is certainly the more dangerous player, and the Ana. So I'd try and send your halt up here and try and pull one of them down and kill them. So just, I would say, reshift your target priority. It's always a good idea to try and pull teammates behind from Orisa shield onto the low ground, because their shield for the most part was right here, and then you can try and halt and then pull them down here. But since it was just Brig and Orisa up here, you don't really have to worry about them as an Orisa, unless they're the last two left. But the Ashe and the Ana, of course, are certainly higher value targets, so I'd focus your attention on eliminating them first. And again, you did identify that the Ana was up there. You just missed the halt a little bit, so that's going to come in practice, just getting it a little bit further away, because she was right at the ledge, and allowing the halt to have enough distance to pull said player down right where Neff is standing. Or Yellow, right where Yellow is standing.
Hello. Objective lost. Stop the payload.
I don't know why teams do this, and it's really strange when you run double shield. You don't want to split up like this, so keep this in mind. You don't want to run two different groups. You want to be all grouped together as a singular unit, and either decide if you want to be at high ground position 1 or decide if you want to be at the low ground position too. Because when you're spread out like this, you're not going to get the same amount of value and whatnot. And when you have an Orisa shield up here, as well as the Sigma barrier, and then you've got the Kinetic Grasp and all your defensive cooldowns and whatnot, it's really difficult to actually break this position going through here when you have both shields and everyone grouped up into the high ground position 1. So keep that in mind when you're defending this point. You've got this brilliantly long sightline to murder everything that comes through that choke point. So defending here with double shield, Ashe on high ground is a very, very strong position. Yes, and also when when you have a full barrier, you can actually just put the barrier here and just block off this whole sightline from the Ashe, because that player is able to threaten you guys. This is not a factor right now, so you don't have to worry about that at the moment. It's this window up here. It's the same thing with like Hanamura. When you're moving into the second point, you can use the Orisa barrier to block off the like the doorway or the windows or whatnot, like specific areas. You have what? 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways you can block off choke points and whatnot, or windows or doorways. So yeah, keep that in mind. What I would do as a Sigma player is just block this off, because this isn't a factor yet, and then you can get value trying to break his shield and then put pressure on to him, and then that'll force the Ashe player back while you're getting some free push on the payload. And then you can either try and halt the Sigma down if he's still up there, or just force them to retreat around and then rejoin on the low ground. But either way, I like the Orisa barrier on the payload itself as you're moving around the corner, because your main goal is just to push the payload around the corner and then try and force said players off of the high ground, or at least force them back into cover so that you're not getting spammed down by an Ashe player, because I mean, they almost have Bob now, and they definitely have the Nano Blade, so we're going to see the Nano Blade come through, and I want to see how you guys respond to that. Seems like a lot of teams in this league like to run the Nano Genji as kind of like their win condition, but like we were practicing before, we have certain ways of countering that, so that is good to hear. Yeah, and once again, you don't have to worry about necessarily getting onto the payload and then pushing it and then setting up. What you could do even from back here, from this position, is you could throw your barrier here and get a lot of value out of that initially, and then Akuma can put his barrier up here, because his priority is going to be blocking this player from doing a lot of damage to your team. So it's like Orisa barrier is always down first, and then the Sigma can follow up as the second barrier. So in that order, every time 1 and 2, and then like we discussed before, the cooldowns with once the Orisa's shield is broken, you can use your Kinetic Grasp if you don't have your shield, and then the Orisa's shield will come back off cooldown, and then you rinse and repeat that process. So. Going for high ground immediately, that's good. That was a nice sleep onto the Orisa as well. Once again, 2 ultimates to win a fight.
Hoi. Oh, hello.
Greetings.
Now, this is my suggestion right here. What I would do is I would actually drop off the payload, abandon the payload, and I'd set up shop right here. And the reason why is because you want to take kind of a defensive position because they're going to be pushing through and contesting. So you no longer are essentially the offensive force that you want to be. You want to be in a defensive position here and try and win this fight so that you can get this checkpoint. So I'd set up the Orisa barrier right here, and then Kuma can block off their damage with the Sigma barrier in 3 seconds from now-ish once they get their DPS involved. Of course, we do have Ash, we have Coalescence, and we're really close to Supercharger. So all you need to do is just send your halt up here and try and force the Orisa up, get like 2 shots on them, and then you'll have Supercharger so you can back off right to this position. You can put your Supercharger here. So that's what I'd do. So that'd be phase 1 of this. Phase 2 would be drop Supercharger here, have your Orisa barrier here. Yellow can send out Bob like right here at this angle. That'll cover this sight line, that'll cover this sight line, and that'll cover this. So that means that they'd have to play in cover to avoid that Bob. Of course, they do have a sleep for it, but if Akuma can place said barrier where Bob would kind of get some protection from it, that would actually force them back even more. Of course, they can respond with their own Bob, but we do have, of course, Coalescence to help keep our team alive, and we do have a sleep dart for him as well. And they would not be able to block off their Bob from getting slept here. So it is advantage your team.
Do something! Cease your resistance! Do something!
Yep, and then there's a sleep dart that comes in on this Bob. Unfortunately, Salem does go down first, but the position of our Bob is really good, of course, like I said. Good sight lines for this Bob, and then they do respond with Supercharger, so if you guys are able to take out the Supercharger quick enough, and then place your shields right here just in front of Bob, and you can use this area just as effectively as cover. You do have Coalescence here, so you can hit Coalescence, try and keep Neff alive, and then the rest of your team, of course, and you can kill the Supercharger with Coalescence as well, because you do have enough range on that beam. But those are just my thoughts on this fight. It was, in my opinion, winnable, but of course they hit all of their ultimates that they needed to hit with Bob and Supercharger. So I mean, that is a lot of extra spam damage coming out. Yeah, like retreating on Orisa is just kind of, you know, it's rough. Let's just be honest. It's a long walk back anyway, and you might as well just walk forward and get value. You already had ultimate, so you know you just die as quickly as possible and get a regroup because it's a long walk back to the payload. And I'll just skip ahead here to the next fight. And once again, it's this long sightline here, and it's like this kind of boggles my mind that there's Sigma players up here, and he's doing his job. He has his barrier here, and yet their Orisa's down here. And it's like, well, if you had your second barrier up here, you'd have a really, really nasty time getting through this choke, and you'd have to go around, like, on the left side, and then go through, or under, and then up and around, something like that. But like going through main here is an option because of the way that they are positioned without taking that much damage yourself. But if you are getting pressured down by the double shield composition from the high ground here with the Orisa barrier and their entire team is here of 6, then you can go around this way and cut the distance down by the going on the flank on the right side, or you can go the really, really long way and up and around, over, and then down through the backside. That is an option as well. So there are three courses of travel that you can use with everybody effectively, but keep in mind if you're against a team that is using this high ground very effectively, you can use one of the other two flanking routes to get to the third checkpoint here, or well, the end of second. Nice dynamite over top. Yeah, once again, 2 groups of 3 here. It's interesting to me. Their team is playing so split. So what I would do is I'd just make a call out and just say, yeah, place your Sigma barrier here and just get all that focus fire up here, since you guys already went mid.
Cease your resistance.
Excellent placement on your supercharger. It is nice and safe and protected. I like the attempt on the flux here. You do actually successfully get him in the flux. It's just unfortunate that your team really can't sustain through it long enough. But you've gotten better at using the flux. Perhaps you were just doing that to practice for actual games, getting Nanoblade and Genjis in the flux. That's certainly an option for you. And once again, approaching from mid, where they have, yes, an Orisa all by their lonesome, and then it seems like everybody else is up here on high ground. I guess the Orisa player didn't get the memo. Big dynamite over top again. And then Salem answers with Blade. You try and solo flux the Nanoblade Genji for style points. Alright, right here. Yes, so we did talk a little bit about coalescence usage and timing on coalescence and whatnot, since you guys already did win the fight quite handedly. I mean, there's still 4 players from the enemy team that are dead. What, the Genji? Did you kill the Ashe straight away? Was it 5 players total? Yes, you did. Okay, the Ashe was the first kill, yes. So, yes, then you use Coalescence, and there's only 1 of the enemy players alive, so you could have kept that easily for the next following fight after the checkpoint for, say, the fight around the corner here. So, yeah, keep in mind how many players they have left and how many players you have left. I mean, obviously you can hit Coalescence anytime you feel you need to keep your team alive, but using it offensively is one of those situations where it's usually not necessary. It's more of a defensive ultimate unless your team really needs both an extra damage and healing push to even things out, or to secure said objective, but at this point, yeah, I mean, just hold on to it for the next fight. You'll be better off. Of course, we'd have Bob too, so that is nice. Send out both ultimates next fight.
Hello.
By will, the payload has reached the checkpoint.
And then once again, I'd be moving to set up said position here, right around the corner. That way you can back out for a retreat if needed. And they're probably going to play around this corner here. So they'll have this sight line and then through here a little bit. And then you guys will have that high ground advantage up here, perhaps with Genji and Ashe if needed. That's a good rally on their part. You send in Bob. Good placement on Bob. Good sleep on their Bob. Now I would suggest putting the shield down right here at this point, because you kind of did get forced back because of the rally. All that extra armor and healing got on everybody on their side, and then so Bob's not going to be able to be saved for this one, so I would say back off, and then you can use this area right here for cover if needed. But yeah, I'd put your shields down right here and here. Yeah, that was a nice halt. I guess they didn't have dynamite to follow up. Or did it get blocked by the shield? Yeah, they just didn't have dynamite.
Do something! Do something!
Yeah, that was excellent Orisa barrier, and then Akuma, you're gonna have to put out your barrier and kinetic grasp as soon as that barrier goes down, so you can absorb as much damage as possible if you don't have your barrier already. Yeah, there you go. And all of you are still alive, so that's good. I mean, it's one example of a good retreat. Good disengage. It's just a partial retreat. Everybody is still living. They used 2 ultimates. You used 1 ultimate, but you're still very much alive in this fight. And they just have the blade. They're probably going to wait for Nano. They will have supercharger. So the ultimate economy overall is in their favor, but you do have all of your players still alive, so that's value.
Engaging fortification.
You get some value from that dynamite.
Cease your resistance.
Alright, well, I'll skip ahead here to the next fight. Ooh, I like the attempt. You almost get the brig off the map. Yeah, that was a good halt over here, so keep practicing those halts for environmental kills as well, because once you get the orb here, that's a pretty good pull over. Just not quite far enough yet, but you're getting the hang of it. Well, we got you this time.
Here it comes. Bob, do something.
Great Bob position right there. Good position again on the supercharger. You've been putting down your supercharger like a pro this whole area, at least in the position of it. But you can get a little more aggressive with it. Sometimes you hold on to it a little bit longer, but your position of placing the ultimate has been excellent, so that's good. I like the halt on Bob. I mean, it does keep him in a position where he could be booped off, technically, though you don't have very many boops on your team except for Coach Gun? Yeah. I mean, I guess you can leave him there and then try and halt him off. Like, I have used halt to stop Bob like this, and then use another halt to halt him off the map. So you can do that if he's still alive, and then try and halt that Hammond off the map as well, or at least get him out of the picture over here. But, you know, one more option there. It is easier to deal with Bob when he's not in a position that's so far away from the payload, because since he's right here, you did halt him into a better position so that you can LOS him potentially on the other side of the payload right here if needed, since he's here. So him being over here would have been, I think, more of a problem for you because you don't want to be on the environmental side, especially with the Hammond to boop you off into the pit. So him being here is excellent. So you get a check mark from me, and then you can reposition over here, and that's where I would be set up. I'd be like, okay, we're shifting to the left side of the payload here, so everybody knows the call out, and then that way you won't get booped off because you are in a dangerous position right now. Good nade on the Hammond though, forcing him back. See, that was a good use of Coalescence. They have a huge anti on your team though. That was a big response from them. Yeah, that was a big nade. Anyway, moving on to Waffle's POV. We're going to be looking at the Objective A hold. A little bit further back than I would expect you guys to play, but it's an okay position. I was expecting you guys to go back up here and take that high ground like they were, because your sight lines are just really, really solid from that angle. Of course, most of the time when I play quick play, I set up right here. People just don't follow me up there when I'm doing solo queue and stuff like that, but in tournaments and teams and whatnot, we can play a little more on the pro side of the strategies and whatnot. So I do like that high ground sort of treehouse position with the double shield, since you're looking down those long sight lines and whatnot, both sides of that choke initially, and then you can rotate over to behind here and then drop down to this position. This is a good setup for like what I'd call position 2. And the reason why I called it second position here is because this is like your drop down position when they're contesting the point, when they actually step onto it. Then you can drop down like this, except your supports will be behind your shields right here, but if you want to start up here as position 1 on the high ground, and then with your long sight lines down, and then you can drop down to position 2 here when they actually contest the point, so that you can prevent ticks and whatnot. This would be how you'd do it. So you'd put the Sigma shield out in front, and then you just throw the Orisa shield down below that, and then everybody jumps behind the Orisa barrier, and then when that breaks, you can use your kinetic grasp to absorb as much spam damage as possible. Throw out your Sigma barrier again, and then throw out your Orisa barrier, and then rinse and repeat that process. But that would be my thoughts on that. That was a nice halt, just getting them a little bit back around the corner for the dynamite, and then a little bit of Genji damage in there too, perhaps a Moira orb. Identify that they are going to go high ground here. Yeah, right here. You do use the halt a little bit too soon here, and the reason why is because they're going to spread out a little bit. So, you're not going to get much value from the halt right here. And this is something I had to break myself of a bad habit using the halt too soon, is because since both their tanks are there, what you want to do is you want to try and position your halt a little bit on the side here or over here and try and pull one or two of them down. Or you can position your halt higher up and then get that big dynamite in over top. So that'd be a couple other pieces of halt advice for you. Like right here when they start moving over, like you can, if you still had your halt, you could throw it up right here and then like catch 2 or 3 of them off of that that high ground and really split their team and get a good dynamite in there too. So of course calling your halt and coordinating with yellow to give him maximum amount of value, as well as Salem, build up those DPS ults before the enemy team can build up their ultimates. Now you have halt. You have halt again. So turn around. The Ashe is on high ground, so you can potentially pull Canadian off to the low ground and get a pick there. Potentially, but I would save that halt for their Ashe player specifically. Yeah, so you use it here in a corridor where nobody is. Like nobody peeked their heads out, and you put it a little bit too far there anyway, so if anybody was even there, you're not going to get any value. So I would say behind you and look up here, this area, and then as a primary position for halting people, and then the I can't see it, I can't show you on the screen, but this guy is directly up top and behind you on that upper ledge. Yep, there you go. So yes, if you still had the halt, then you could just send the halt up here and try and halt them back either off the high ground or just closer to the window, and that's an easy pick right there. Yeah, that's a good halt. Just keeping him still. He's right in front of Salem's face, so just a little bit of alternate fire shuriken right in the face, and then melee. Nicely done. Good job. Yellow takes care of his opposite counterpart.
My ultimate is ready.
Yes, good, Akuma. You're recharging your shield. I want to see that. Every time Waffle's barrier is out and you guys are grouped up together, you can leave your barrier down to recharge, and then as soon as the Orisa barrier drops, you can put your Sigma barrier out, and then when your Sigma barrier gets destroyed, you can Kinetic Grasp. Getting mighty aggressive there. But yes, play the long game a little bit. You do have Blade. You don't necessarily have to get in their face and show them that you're the boss. You are the boss. We know you're the boss. That's alright. You've proven yourself. We're just waiting on Nano. As soon as Nano... So you can play safe. Play safe. Play safe behind your tanks. Get that poke damage in still. That's cool. Wait for your Nano Blade. And then light them up right at 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Yes, you do have Bob, so that would be my opener here. Would be to for your team would be to Bob first, get them to back off a little bit, and try and sleep him, and then you'll have the Nano Blade here to follow up if needed. That was a good fortify here. And the reason why is because you're going to be halted up over your shield and potentially killed. So yes, good identifying that. Good kill on the Genji. Ooh, that was a good haul bringing back Canadian, yes. Almost get a pick on him. There you go. Good barrier. Force him to use deflect, yes, and then you can halt him back and kill him. Yep, just a little bit too late though, but you got the right idea. I'm proud of you.
Defense mode activated.
Did not need to fortify there.
You're not getting away.
This is turning out to be a very good defensive hold here. But clock management. You're at 1:40. They don't have Nano Blade yet. They have Bob, but they haven't pushed in yet. They're grouped up here. Yes, you do identify that they are grouped up, but you potentially could wait 10 more seconds for the right here, and then halt in and pull out your Nano Blade. The reason why is because of your double shield, that's buying you a lot of time to defend yourselves before they can push in with their double shield. And so in my opinion, you blade like 10 seconds too soon here. But you can really bleed the clock more. Because if you don't get big value out of this blade, then they're going to push in and take this. So it's a very high risk, high reward play right here. And so that's just one of those things. Waffle and Akuma have been doing a pretty good job of resource and shield management this entire time. So, I mean, the more that they work together with the double shield composition, the more comfortable they're going to be, and they're going to be on the same page with each other and work closely together with each other and whatnot. And so we're seeing a lot of good teamwork here. It's a thing of you need to trust your teammates a little bit more and not go for the hero play right off the bat before the enemy team even pushes in through the corridor. So, I get that it's a preemptive strike, but you can bleed the clock more and get more value out of this if you're just a little bit more patient here. So, we will continue on. good halt because you have Coalescence. So you can break that shield and then you can really do damage. I'm surprised that shield was lasting this long though, because you do have a lot of damage going into it. So, I mean, I guess you're assuming that it would break instantly. I mean, it pretty much did. It lasted 1 second longer than I thought it would. Let's just put it that way. But yes, you do have Supercharger now. That's excellent. Yes, I'll go back to this. Right here. Yes, they haven't pushed in yet, and so with the changes to the Moira Orb, it's not going to stick on to the enemy team as much yet. So as soon as they round the corner, then you can damage orb out. Yes, you have the right idea. You're damage orbing before they get into position and do any damage to you guys. You're sitting behind 2 barriers, so it's like damage orb before they push in every single fight because they're not able to do much damage to you. That's good, but just be a little more patient on the damage orb itself, and then you'll be able to get 10% more ult charge here. Because right here, you get some value, but you know, you'd be 12% now if it was able to fully deplete. So yes, just keep that in mind. Like, it's these little minute differences with Moira where you can get a lot of value if you get good timing on your damage orb to open things up. Yeah, it's just over 40 seconds left, so that was a pretty solid hold on the first point. I'm very satisfied with that. For some reason, they step off the point. I guess they get too excited. All right, so this is a little too far forward here, and I'll tell you why. Because the rest of your team is too far back, and this is something that I've had to identify with my own Orisa gameplay over the years, is because I'd be a little too aggressive sometimes to get myself picked off because I'd push up and my team wasn't ready to join me. So as the main tank, you're going to have to look behind you and you're going to be like, yeah, okay guys, are you ready to push in? And then you can set your shield down right here. You do have Supercharger, so I'd set your shield down here, and then I'd Supercharger this corner as soon as everybody's ready, and then we're going to go in because we almost have Bob too. So it's like, you know, Supercharger preemptively here as soon as they push in, and then you can Bob. You don't necessarily have to blade here. You can wait for the nano, of course. They just use their own blades, so that's, you know, that's whatever. That's why they won the fight, really. But that's my thought process here. You can take your time on this one because you're not getting pressured with a dive or a really aggressive brawl composition. This is more of a mind game and positioning battle, and really more so positioning. You look at these team compositions here, and with the double shield, it is all about positioning and draining the other team's resources. These are very, very slow fights and slow engagements, and a lot of people really don't like slow engagements in Overwatch, and that's why it drives people up the wall when like double shield is played. But it's like, if you're patient and you do it correctly with good positioning and timing and resource management, you can be extremely effective at this composition. So that is why I am excited to do this VOD review, but, you know, spoken like a true Orisa player, I'm excited to see Orisa gameplay. Nobody else is, though. Yes, okay, so you identify they're coming around here. Akuma's barrier gets broken, he can connect grasp. you did not put down your barrier fast enough, and you can supercharge her here. So that's like one of those things where, yes, and you do have plenty of heal. Like you have two main supports on you, so you should be able to live after. But it's like barrier first and then fortify. So if you want to take this engagement, it is barrier first, supercharger, and then you're going to fortify as soon as your barrier goes down. You have kinetic grasp, and then Akuma's going to put his barrier out. So it's like one of those things. Maybe you were caught off guard by this. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to talk to you later about this particular engagement. But this is one of the most interesting ones to me, is because you were kind of a little bit far forward here. And it's like the rest of your team wasn't really ready to push the engagement here. So I wasn't sure if you guys were on the same page or not. But that's like one of those things that I would do. Just seeing what I'm seeing right now, it would be barrier out first, supercharger right here, and then when your barrier breaks, it'd be your fortify, and then you're going to get a lot of healing from both your main supports, and then you're going to get kinetic grasp from Akuma, and then another barrier from him. But you know, I mean, tough stuff. But like, Yo almost has Bob, so it's like maybe the engagement happened a little bit too soon, and you guys just weren't ready. But that's just what I'm seeing from this. Is like a little bit of mismanagement on the cooldown side of things, but let's see how this plays out. Ah, yes, that's why. Okay, so because if you put your shield out first, and then you supercharge it here, and then that would force them to use, of course, the beat and the flux, and then you'd have fortify to get out of the flux. You wouldn't take any damage, and you'd still be alive. And then Yellow could follow up with Bob. A lot of ultimates could be used in this fight, but holding them around here on second is huge for King's Row, because if you can prevent them from getting that third checkpoint, it's really, really difficult to complete the map if you're holding them just beyond bookstore here. Attackers have such a disadvantage with the distance of how long that spawn is by the time you get around the corner there to the first subway tunnel. Okay, well, I'll skip ahead here. And we are back. And this is something I can work on you with a little bit, is because you know that your team's right in front of you right there, and you do identify putting out the shield, but you can do it a little bit quicker too. And you can get good at this, as I have over the years, and placing your barrier with the appropriate distance and timing to go in front of your teammates there and drop down here. I'll just use a rectangle for the sake of Orisa's shield. I'm not going to draw the actual shape, but you get the idea. And by the time you walk up here and get up to the front line, your shield will be back up again. So it's like, even if you miss, it's not that big of a deal. But just getting a good habit of when you're coming back, if you have a sight line, to put your shield down. I do this on the Ilios well and the Pulse Sanctum all the time. I'll put down the barrier preemptively, and then by the time I'm getting up there, the barrier will be back up. Even if I messed up the placement of said barrier, you'll have another chance to put your new barrier down at the correct location. So it's like just another opportunity of giving your teammates a little more protection as you're respawning back, because Orisa is very powerful when you can project barriers across said map and get key protection on your DPS and backline from afar. Even when you're not there, you can protect, so that is good.
I require assistance. I recommend moving behind my body.
Halting a little bit too soon there. You are on the other side of the payload, and they're not pressing you down. Perhaps it was a halt intended for just the Sigma, or maybe it was just intended for the Genji, but I would say once you're in this position, you can get a clear sightline here and get more value halting said Genji back, and then get a pick on him, and that'll slow things down for the enemy team even more. I love this position. This is very solid. You've got a good retreat coming back here, and then you're playing around this corner with double shield. Of course, they're only going to go in two directions. Either they're going to go main to face you head on, or they're going to go left side. Of course, spoiler alert, you know that they go left side, and you identify that, so that's good. And we will see exactly how you deal with this engagement. That's another one of those things when you're talking about like halts and cooldowns and whatnot. Use the halt there. They do have a full shield, so you're not actually going to get any value out of that, but Canadian goes for the window. Try to get some dynamite there, so you can halt said player back out of the window. Try and get them down on the street, even if you can't. You're halting them into Yellow and Salem's direct line of sight here, as well as on a damage, so perhaps you can get a pick on said player. Keep that in mind.
Please move behind the barrier.
It's always something that's running through my head is my cooldown resources and management. Because you did use your shield very appropriately here. That means that it's going to be back up by the time they actually come through here. You will have your halt, you'll have your fortify. You shouldn't actually use your fortify for like a good 10 seconds here, but we'll see how long you can go without having to use fortify. And you have your halt for when the Sigma barrier breaks. It's not going to be the Orisa barrier because you can halt over the Orisa barrier. You want to break the Sigma barrier, and then you want to halt them out and get a huge dynamite and bob in there if needed. Flux kills other Sigma, that's good. Shouldn't have to use any more ultimates here. The Flux should have done it for you. Yeah. And this is what I like with the Orisa duel itself. Okay. Now, you do go into a slight disadvantage if you place your shield down first, but you want to make sure that it's closer to yourself when you're dueling another Orisa, straight on like this. Have your barrier protect you, and then you're going to barrier dance around your shield. If you have fortify up, you can fortify, and if you have the say the XP or the not XP, the health HP counter, since yours is slightly higher than theirs, you can go for a halt here, and you can actually pull said other Orisa player behind your shield. That gives you a little bit more protection here, and then you want to get as many headshots as possible, so always aim for the head of opposing Orisa players. They're not going to move very fast, of course, so shooting their head is very, very easy, especially for you. I know your accuracy is actually pretty good on Orisa so far, so you shouldn't have a problem doing that, but that's just my tip for you, is put down your shield on yourself. If you need to back off a little bit and then put a shield down, that's fine. And then you can use your halt if they're getting close, pull them outside of your shield, and then that will give you another advantage. And then if they're able to get inside, you can fortify and get as many headshots on them as possible. So, overall, just a little Orisa tip there. And you do get some headshots in there, that's nice. Good attempt, though. I mean, they were retreating, try and pull that Genji back and get another stagger kill, milk the clock a little more.
For your safety, please move behind the barrier. 60 seconds remaining.
I like this position. It is pretty safe. It's I would be thinking about getting the team to group up with me and actually push out here and try and get a lot more ultimate charge and value on said players, because they do like to play split, but this is the safe position here, so no complaints from me on this one. Perhaps they're going to go left side again, but I would on this spot here, I'd actually back off a little bit, and that would give you a better line of sight on the left side. If they're going left side, I would actually play out of that little mega room there or next to it. That way you can get a better position onto the enemy team, and then of course you can use your payload here as cover if needed. But yes, you do have Nano Blade here as well as them, so this is going to get spicy and interesting. So I would say if you're coordinating with Salem on this one, try and get Bob in there first. I would say, yeah, I'd recommend sending out Bob first here and get a good sightline on him. Like, send Bob out like down here, right up against this wall, because he can cover this angle and he can cover that angle and he can cover this angle. So like if they push out of that little corridor, they're going to get wrecked, and they have to push out of the corridor to touch the payload. And then I would say halt, Nano Blade, get as many of them grouped up as possible, and then they're going to, of course, counter you with Nano Blade. Unfortunately, you don't have Flex to try and counter their Nano Blade, but you do have some tools here like Bob, Fortify, the Halt, stuff like that, so you could try and delay getting killed by it.
No. Hello. 30 seconds.
Is it too far away, or do you get another fight here? You should get another fight. Oh, okay, they pushed so far forward that you weren't able to get back in time. That's unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, the hold was so good there that you almost got a second fight. You're just, unfortunately, you don't have that Lucio speed boost to get back in time. Alright, I'm just going to skip ahead to this fight because, I mean, that one was just an ultimate fiesta there. Ah, yes, right here. Okay, so you do have Akuma's shield. That's a good placement from him. Good cover and protection. Your barrier's coming up. You can put it right here, and then you can walk to the right side here and stick your supercharger right here and go for it, because you're going to be forcing them back. Yoa's coming back on Doomfist. Like, supercharger on Doomfist, you're going to get huge value. You almost have Blade, so supercharger's still going to be running by the time Blade goes out if needed. So that's just one of those things, like, it can break those shields on the enemy team. It just gets so much value out of it. So that's what I'd be thinking right here because of where the payload is. Of course, you can also get more value out of that because you can help build up the coalescence faster, and then of course Nano is going to be online in probably 40 seconds because of how much damage you're going to be taking, and then you will have Flux for the next fight too. So that is one of those reasons why I'd supercharger this fight, because you're going to get so much more value out of it, and that's going to help build up your ultimates for the next final fight. And right there, he wasn't quite ready for the blade, so I'd be more concerned about halting up over that shield and then trying to get good value with Doomfist going in and whatnot. So that's where I would halt, but that's just my opinion on that. Because if he had blade ready, then I'd halt over the top a little bit, but since you already had both your DPS going in, you know, I suppose it didn't matter because they were all like grouped up together, but keep that in mind, and then keep breaking that shield, and then I'd go directly onto the enemy Ana player if you can. She's playing a little bit back and safe, but that'd be a good focus. Either the Ashe or the Ana. That's pretty much their. It's a combination of their main source of healing and their main source of damage. So if you can get one of the two off the bat, then that's great. Killed during beat. That is a feels good for you guys. And going for the halt to pull him back. Good queen up here. Interesting position now because you will have Coalescence as well as your Supercharger. And this is something that I would stress is like as soon as they push in, you're going to use your Supercharger because it lasts for the duration of the final fight anyway. So you're going to get a huge amount of value if you hit it early. You don't want them to push in and then wait too long to hit Supercharger. So I'll show you the exact time that I would hit it right now. So we're waiting for them to regroup.
Slowly they realize that failure is all that awaits them.
Yeah, and I'd be pulling back a little bit unless you want to hold right here at this location. This is fine because you do have a good sight line. I would have pulled back to a more safe location for this, but because you guys are here, if you're ready to hold this corner here, you can do that. You can use the wall as cover, you can use the payload as cover if necessary, but I would hit Supercharger right now, and I'd place it right here if you want to hold here, because then you also have Akuma's barrier out too, and you'll have Coalescence, so you can damage Orb out and Coalescence. That's going to do a ton of damage and bleed time off the clock, and hopefully you can get a couple of limbs with that, but at the very least you're going to break both their shields, and you're going to force them into a resource battle that they cannot win. So that is a good strategy on your part. A little too far forward, but I know you're trying to go for the environmental picks there. I mean, why not? But if you want to go into custom games and practice that a little bit more, that's great too. You do almost have Flux here, so your next halt would be a halt into Flux, and that's what I'd coordinate with Akuma here. They use Supercharger before you use Supercharger, so like that's what I was talking about. It's like, you know, be the first one, be proactive and use Supercharger because they were about ready to push in, and then you have your fresh barrier down as well as Akuma's shield, and then your other defensive cooldowns there, like your Fortify. But yeah, so let's see how this plays out here. Good Fortify here. Because you backed out, and this is the final fight, I would just put a shield down right here. You do have to be careful of these grates because the shield can actually go through the abyss and not register. So if you're putting it here, that's fine, or if you're putting it here, that's fine, or here. But you know, you can choose one of those locations, and then I'd walk around here and then drop your Supercharger on the X here, kind of like where your gun icon is located, and then that's safe out of the line of sight. And then your team's going to get some value, of course. Hit Coalescence. I think you hit Coalescence here a little bit too late because you guys just need to be more proactive about, you know it's the final fight, so everything's on the line here. You had a pretty good position there. I kind of knocked it at the beginning. I'm sorry. It was pretty good right here. And having your Supercharger placed there, and then just go all out and hit all of your cooldowns and try and get as much damage into the enemy team as possible. Force them to use as many ultimates early as possible, and force them into a bad position. You can win the positional war and the resource management war there too. So now you're on the defensive. Very much you were in the driver's seat when the fight started, but now you're at a disadvantage with the Ashe on the high ground already. So that is one of those things that I forgot about just doing this VOD review, is that yes, they do have an Ashe that can take high ground, so having that forward position out here and preventing them from getting to that location was really important too. So see how this goes. Flux catches 3. 2? Yeah. Got some nice kills in there though. And you did kill the Ana, that was very important. And you're coming back on Hammond? Yes. Yeah, just a few things there. A lot of tips. Hopefully they help your gameplay out a lot, and just stuff like this, like identifying the final fight. Like, you guys were in a really solid position here. I didn't realize how good this was until things started to break down, but they were all grouped up and they were coming around the corner. But yeah, being right here and then throwing down your supercharger right there, and just with coalescence, damage orb out, coalescence, and then getting as much value out of that, breaking those shields as much as possible, because you did have, well, if you had coalescence hypothetically up, then you can halt into them and try and get them together as much as possible, get as much damage in that you can, so stuff like that. But overall, I hope that you enjoyed this review, and I will see you guys in the next one.